Commissioner Thompson, testing for audio.
Here I am. I can hear you. Can you hear me?
Great, thank you.
Thank you, ma'am.
Yes, we can.
Okay, can everybody hear me?
You started.
Can you?
hear you really well.
Oh, good. Well, that's one. That's one.
That was a joke.
Okay, we'll try this out. Work sessions are an opportunity for board members to discuss issues informally with staff and invited guests. The board encourages members of the public to attend work sessions and listen to the discussion, but there's generally no opportunity for public comment. Members of the public wishing to address the board are welcome to do so during the board's regularly scheduled meetings held twice monthly. Two items on the, actually we have three items on the work session agenda. We'll start with the county manager update.
Thank you, Chair Coelho, members of the board. I don't really have any updates right now besides to say that we did participate in city manager interviews over in Warrenton this afternoon, and so they will be having an executive session tomorrow and then hopefully making a decision. So besides that, I don't have anything this afternoon. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, county manager. Now I've got the right agenda out.
Notice how I filled that so
Excellent,
so
thank you. Great cover. First item is to discuss the formal agenda. Everybody had an opportunity to review the agenda? Any questions, comments?
Mr. Chair.
Commissioner Thompson?
Thank you, sir. I would just mention for my colleagues here, item 8 of the consent agenda, the agreement with Colpack. I'm the vice chair of Colpack. I don't get any financial benefit from this, but I hope that my colleagues notice that in the agreement, Colpack is billing for their time only, not a flat fee, in order to minimize costs to the county and maximize benefit to the recipients. So I just wanted to make that point. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Thompson. And then your point is noted. Any other comments, questions? Okay, if not, we'll move on to the topics of our work session. The first is exception to Goal 11 and text amendments to the Clatsop County Comprehensive Plan and Clatsop Plains Community Plan to extend the Shoreline Sanitary District's boundary. We have 10 minutes, and Julia Decker is here to present on this. Welcome, Julia.
Thank you. Good evening, everyone. Commissioners, Chair Huila. I am Julia Decker. I'm Planning Manager of Community Development, and we provided to you a brief outline. This is the coming attractions. I think I used that term earlier. So this is not the hearing. This is not the detail about the application at all, but I wanted to let you know what is coming onto your agenda for August and September. So Community Development has received and is processing a request for an exception to statewide Planning Goal 11, Public Facilities and Services. This is the first goal exception to be requested since 2012, also involving the same sanitary district, I might add. So it's been a decade. We don't have anybody currently in staff who actually has worked on one of these, so it's been an educational experience, a little bit of an adventure. We like those. So staff is here this evening to give you the outline of the procedure very generally and to let you know this application is coming to your board for hearing and first reading on August 24th. And second reading and adoption are scheduled for September 14th. Briefly, the Community Development Department is following the goal exception procedures outlined in statewide Planning Goal 2, OAR 660-004, and statutes found in ORS 197.732. An exception means a provision to the comprehensive plan that amends it and is applicable to specific properties or situations and does not establish a planning or zoning policy of general applicability. In other words, it's very specific to the site. The provision does not comply with some or all of the goal requirements applicable to the subject properties or situations. In other words, it's exceptional. It doesn't fit under goal criteria neatly, so it doesn't fit, so it's an exception. Also required is a thorough review of the standards for taking an exception to the specific goal, and in this case, Goal 11, found in OAR 660-011-0060, which is addressed in detail in the staff report for your board's August 24th hearing. So a local government may adopt an exception to a goal if the land in question and appropriate standards are met. The procedure includes a post-acknowledgement plan amendment. It requires notification of the Department of Land Conservation and Development with specific documents and with specific timeframe structure, public notice to surrounding property owners and interested agencies, in this case the City of Warrenton, a public hearing by and recommendation from the Planning Commission, and adoption of the amendment by resolution and order by your board using the county's procedures. In general, the standards are designed to assure that the land use is compatible with the use on surrounding lands and will not cause adverse impacts on surrounding lands. Staff is moving forward with the procedures. Proper notifications have been made. Planning Commission has met and heard the matter on July 12th, and they've made a recommendation. And staff will bring this to your board in August. And if you have questions for me, but only in the most general terms, we are not hearing this evening.
Okay. Yeah, thank you for that great summary. Any questions for Planning Manager Decker?
I did have one.
Commissioner Banks?
Is there anybody on staff from 2012 that has any history on this applicant?
I am as close as you're going to get.
Okay.
And I am not the planner who worked on it at the time. I was
Okay.
a planner here in 2012. I did not work on this particular project at the time.
Okay. History on why is it circling back, but, okay.
It's a different application.
Oh, okay. Same
Okay.
area, different application.
It's the same sanitary district,
Okay.
but in 2012, we shouldn't get into this in too much detail because it is going to be part of your packet. But in 2012, the Shoreline Sanitary District, which is Shoreline Estates, had a Goal 12 exception taken to be able to connect to the City of Warrenton Sanitary District to pipe 3.5 miles so that their failing system out of violation. So that's a completely different application.
So,
It's the same,
okay.
same sanitary district, different application.
Okay. That makes more sense then. Thank you.
Commissioner Thompson?
Thank you, sir. I wonder, Planner Decker, if this matter came before the Planning Commission, because I did sit on the Planning Commission then, and I have just a faint recollection. I don't think my personal filing system is adequate to dig down into it, but if it came before the Planning Commission, I did have some experience with it. Thank you.
Yep, thank you. So noted. Any other questions, comments? Commissioner Webb?
Maybe I can say that I've been involved in Oregon on several goal exceptions. In my experience, they've always been kind of one of two types. One is a slam dunk, because so often public facilities have to be cited, especially for unincorporated areas. I say that. They often have to be, and you're using very, very few goal exceptions. The ones that tend to be most difficult, I think, are the ones that happen in urban areas, because so often that it's just a little dicier, and it's a little harder to prove the need for something in an urban place that isn't according to zoning or others. So don't be worried. This is not a heavy-duty operation. It's very rare, but for us, but it's not a huge climb.
Yeah.
It's not a huge climb.
I think you make a very good point, Commissioner Webb. I would happen to be in Warrenton City Commission at the time, but Shoreline Sanitary Shoreline Sanitary Sewer District was forming, and this was a heavy lift for everybody at Columbia Lake to establish this. But at the time, they wanted to be able to connect other properties along that 3.5 mile stretch. They were not allowed to do so, and we predicted this would happen at some point in time, that this was going to be necessary. So, not a surprise.
Not a surprise. This one's a little bit different. This is actually on the other side of the pipe.
Okay. Any other questions, comments? Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Next item is the overview county role in affordable housing. That's on page 5 of our agenda, and we have 20 minutes assigned to this. I'll turn it over to our county manager, Don Boone.
Thank you, Chair Coelho, members of the board. I know this is going to be an awkward discussion, but this is what this presentation is really intended to be, is a discussion about the direction that the county is going with our affordable housing efforts. I'll just start with a little background, and that is that the cities and the county collaborated on the Clatsop County Housing Strategies report. And what came out of that is what was really 5 areas for recommendations, and that included land supply, policy and development code, development incentives, funding tools and uses, and regional collaboration and capacity building. Many of the recommendations, as you know, really describe a role for the cities, and the cities have a primary role in really planning for and then citing affordable housing. But the county does have a role in the rural areas, and we certainly have a role in partnership with our cities. The report goes through and talks a little bit about what the role of the county is, and then the autonomy that the cities have by statute to also create their own policies, planning, ordinances. And so, you know, kind of what the art of the affordable housing, like a lot of challenging issues, is then how do the cities have what that often used term in my mind is that coordinated muscle movement between themselves, and then how do they also have that with the county so that we can help each other, sometimes inspire each other, but certainly have a unified goal, which is to create the housing, both workforce and affordable housing that the community needs. And so, you know, as the county looks at our role, we really do three things, and we've talked about this before, but just real quickly, we either provide direct services, we partner, or we support. And we provide direct services, and there's a page, it's actually table 1 in the report that kind of outlines what these different roles are. Most of our direct services, as the board is aware, is in the rural unincorporated area, and it's countywide. So there are some countywide services, and then there are some that we only provide in the rural areas. We don't provide incorporated services. So there's not unique services that the county is providing within cities. If we are providing services within cities, it's the countywide services. And so then we partner, and some examples of the partnerships in the rural area is a partnership with Jewel School District on the broadband initiative. In the incorporated areas, one of the partnerships is like City of Seaside with the surplus land that the county is going to be providing for affordable housing. And then countywide, we have a number of things that the county does in partnership, including economic development through Cedar, Colpack. And then we support others like our schools. We don't provide direct services. We don't necessarily partner, but we support schools as they are trying to get more school funding through support letters or through some of their other initiatives. And so that's the lens that we're always looking at how the county performs, because these partnerships and these support functions are also really important to the community. So we don't have to just be a direct service provider. So when you look at the housing area, you know, the county does not contemplate building affordable housing. We contemplate partnering with the cities, providing support, resources, but not actually developing housing. And the reason is we don't have a housing department, we don't have the housing authority, we don't have housing staff. So what we are doing, though, is we have a number of priorities, and some are coming from the community development department, and that includes updating Goal 10 as part of the comprehensive plan, and then looking at rural accessory dwelling units, infrastructure capacity in the rural areas, as well as the parking standards. And that's all work that Gail has been talking to the board about. In the county manager's office, we have been working on the land banking process, which is the surplus land. We're making progress there, having our first transfer of land coming up in the next several weeks. The ARPA concept plan included pre-development grant program, and so the idea was to set aside some of the ARPA money, which is an allowable ARPA expense, to then help nonprofit housing developers, put some of that first money into a project just to see if it's feasible. And that's money that they don't necessarily have. And so what we are doing is talking to some of our partner agencies to see if one of them might be a home for this fund. And so those conversations continue. But I think that'll be an important element as we try to actually generate some additional housing. On August 1st, actually, I think it's being released soon, is the housing dashboard, and it may have been publicly released today. So the housing dashboard is done, and I have to thank staff, Amanda, staff from Jim's department, IT, and Gail's staff, and I mean, it was a county effort. We put this dashboard together in cooperation with the cities. So it will have the affordable housing units in the county as well as a dashboard for the housing that is in the development process. So we can track how we're making progress towards those goals. Because, we know that over the next 20 years, the goal is to generate about 3,000 units. So we'll be tracking that. There's still ongoing work going on with micro-housing and other transitional housing and some pretty exciting work, and there'll be more about that soon. But City of Seaside has been working on a number of initiatives. And then we provide financial support for the safety net social service providers through the ARPA funding, and those are organizations like, Clatsop Community Action, Helping Hands, Astoria Warming Shelter, the Harbor, Lifeboat. And then we have the Affordable Housing Task Force, which is now meeting monthly and will really ideally provide that opportunity for co-production for the cities and for the county, whether it's coordinating land use regulations or coordinating financial incentives. I think there's some exciting possibilities as we go through that process. So in a nutshell, that's kind of where the county's efforts are. We are active. There's a lot that is being done. I think we're going to start to see some of the rewards of these efforts in the coming months. But I wanted to share that with the board and then get your feedback on whether you think we're heading in the right direction or if there's any course correction or any additional emphasis that the staff should be making. So thank you, Chair Coyla.
Thank you, County Manager. Congratulations to everybody that worked on that dashboard. It's so nice to have that up. I had a question about how that gets updated, how frequently and what, stage of, say, development does it then come on the map? Say you have a proposal, does it need to go to the Planning Commission or what at the jurisdiction, or how does it get identified as a potential development?
What I might ask Chair Coyla is that we'll come back and have an actual presentation so that we can walk through the dashboard and then talk about how it's being updated and what the criteria are. Because this is a partnership with the city development departments that are actually the ones inputting a lot of the information. So let us walk through that. We'll schedule an upcoming work session.
Sounds great. Any questions, comments?
Just a quick
Commissioner
one.
Banks?
Wow, I feel really loud. Just thinking about the task force, is there going to be, shared notes, regarding progress and information that comes from the task force?
Absolutely. The task force meetings are being taped also, so they'll be available. But yes, we will take notes, and we will share that with the entire board. And if there's something that may lead to some actionable item by the board, we will bring it to your board for discussion prior to any action. So we'll keep everybody in the loop as we go through this. So far, we've just gone through really kind of an orientation meeting at this point, and I think it's going to take a number of meetings to really get into the detail. So
I will have to say I really enjoyed that joint officials meeting that we had up at the fairgrounds, and I hope that we can repeat something like that at least yearly with similar topics like housing. But I feel like we got some trajectory started just at that meeting, and I would love to continue that type of relationship and conversation. Good things happen.
Yeah. Agreed, Commissioner Banks. Chair recognizes Commissioner Thompson and Commissioner Webb.
I need a hand, huh?
Thank you. I agree with what Commissioner Banks said about enjoying our city-county meeting and hoping we have more of those, and also to get the information from those meetings. I think they're critical. I'm looking at how this city-county task force integrates with our regional and statewide partners. How does it interact with CCA, with CARES, if it does, in Tillamook County, with the Community Action Team in St. Helens, which is Tri-County, with the Association of Oregon Counties, the CSAC, I mean, the district. There's lots going on, and I think the challenge is going to be how to integrate the information flow so that we have that coordinated muscle movement, because we have feeder inputs from a variety of places. Is that contemplated? How to integrate the flow?
Chair Thompson, members of the board, I think at this point, I mean, I would say yes, that the goal is to identify additional interested parties and additional stakeholders, and to try to make those interconnections as we move forward with this. I think at this point, we're in very much the brainstorming phase of really trying to figure out what are some of those levers that the cities really agree to and can find some co-production opportunities on. And so I think as that happens, there'll be opportunities to make sure that we're connecting with other housing entities as well as other funding possibilities. I just think we are early, but yes, to answer your question, that is contemplated.
Yeah, and to reaffirm what the county manager was, and this was an opportunity to have Jeff Adams from Cannon Beach once again present. He presented some of the same information that he did to the entire group. We broke into small groups and talked about specific instances in communities where we could identify potential for affordable housing. And then when we broke back into the large group, it really was to identify who's not at the table, who do we need to bring to this meeting. And then what everybody agreed to is you can't solve anything at a quarterly meeting, you got to do it more frequent. So we all agreed to do it on a monthly basis rather than quarterly. But that was really about what was accomplished at the meeting.
That's a good summary, Commissioner.
A good first step. Commissioner Webb.
Yeah, I would just like to register my sadness that NOAA wasn't included in this meeting. I think that was a grave mistake. They legally in Clatsop County are really the only organization that can implement federally funded assisted housing for people. And I think it was a grave mistake. And I certainly hope we have a new director at NOAA now. I'll be giving you a full report about what's going on there. And I certainly hope that they will be brought to that table.
And if I could, Commissioner, I would say that I know that they were reached out to, but that was prior to the new director being here. And so there was outreach, but...
Really? Oh, I wish I had known that. I wish I had known that. I would have done something about that.
And they were identified during the meeting as one of the people that need to be there. And I think it was county manager that actually had identified NOAA as someone that needs to be party to this. Any other comments, questions? Who's first? Commissioner Toyoka.
Look like I had
This is all new, this is all new to me after,
No.
doing this virtually for so long.
I know, it's so new. Yes, and unfortunately, I was unable to attend that meeting, and thank you for providing that coverage on that. But, again, just wanted to stress that the county is, we're not land developers, we're not, builders, we're not contractors. So, the main role of facilitator is key. And bringing other private enterprise, private partners into it instead of just city and, governmental agencies into it, how we can partner with them and, our role as facilitators through either land use or zoning can help us, provide that opportunity for more housing. So exploring every avenue. That was the only input I would like to provide.
And one of the topics that was discussed at the meeting, and this was coming from the cities, is just density, is trying to, and every city's different, and so, but to have conversations about density and how to then optimize the opportunities within that. So, and I think that is going to continue to be part of the conversation with the cities, so.
Commissioner Webb?
Yes, good. Yeah, I guess I'm listening to, especially to what Commissioner Toyoka just said. I'm a little sad once again that we as the county are not, in fact, the facilitator of this effort. It seems to me rather unusual to have kind of the planning director of one of our smaller cities taking the initiative on this. And I wonder if there was any discussion at this meeting about passing the baton to perhaps folks like us who have more resources and might be able to offer a greater bit of coordination.
Yeah, actually, Commissioner Webb, that was also part of the discussion, is that the Cannon Beach Community Development Director did not want to be the facilitator, and so Denise Lossman from Crest was there, and the consensus, I believe, of everyone there was to allow for Crest to take over the facilitation of the task force moving forward. So,
yeah, at least for the next several meetings, so that we can figure out what the best path forward is.
Yeah,
so.
Maybe I used the wrong word. I think there's a difference between a facilitator who can actually, run a good meeting, especially with as many people who are involved, but more of a leadership role that might be more appropriate for the county to have. So, I can certainly,
yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Commissioner Webb. The county's going to have a presence no matter what. Did you have?
Yeah, I just
Commissioner
had a side comment, kind of on the same track of Commissioner Toyoka regarding our private partners and the passion that private partners bring to the table in regards to these topics. And so I often see Clatsop Community Action, and I often see the harbor, but I don't often see lifeboat services, and I don't often see the warming center involved. And I feel like that those are some very passionate volunteer partnerships that are missing from the conversation pretty regularly, and I don't know why. And so I guess I'm just kind of throwing it out there that sometimes private partners bring energy, passion, and time to a conversation that, we may not have that excess time or whatnot. And I've always kind of seen the county as a toolbox full of multiple tools. And we can't be passionate about, high passion about everything, but we can provide tools to our partners who have that energy to move a problem forward. And so maybe not having to be the top of the pyramid so much as the foundation, kind of allowing our partners to work off of. But I would just encourage whoever is going to these meetings. I know I've got, my plate is full, nose goes, but to say that maybe we need to really reach out to the private industry too. So.
And I think, and I'll let the county manager respond, but I believe that both of those agencies are on the City of Astoria homeless task force. So
They absolutely are, and they're both involved in the conversations regarding the transitional housing in investments that are, you know, ongoing now and will be more, you know, visible soon, because, I mean, transitional housing is really vital as a means to give the homeless a place to then transition into more permanent housing. So they are involved there, and what I would say is that we will continually expand the circle, but it will probably be based on the type of housing that is being developed, and every circle of stakeholders and partners may be a little bit different, and also will be different if it's a South County project and sometimes if it's a North County project, just because there's different nonprofits that are more prevalent in different communities. Absolutely, they are one of our partners, and they're one of the, both of those are two of the nonprofits that are receiving ARPA funding. So.
Yeah, thank you, County Manager. I see that Commissioner Thompson has been waiting patiently, virtually.
Thank you.
Commissioner Thompson.
Virtually patiently. So the issue of urbanization is very interesting to me, and particularly in South County. I'm not an expert on points along the Columbia, but in South County, I wonder what scope of future casting will be involved in this effort. I mean, we have enough just to now cast and do short-term future casting, but as we're looking at urbanization, we're looking at economic development and population trends. Is that going to be within the scope of this group?
Commissioner Thompson, I think it is early. I think we're going to see what the details are as we go. What I would say is that right now, you know, the cities are really trying to find out where they have commonalities, and that could be in terms of problem definition, and then where they have commonalities with approach. And then through that, I think we'll have opportunities that then figure out how we can help each other. So we're still at that very early stage. So what I would say, Commissioner, is there's probably more to come as we go through that.
Commissioner Webb?
I thought that Commissioner Bangs was going to, when she talked about the private sector, I was excited because some of the voices that I would love to see on this committee are some of our true private sector folks, the construction trades, either the trade side or the construction management side. I would love to have some realtors at the table. I find in my non-commission work, when I talk to realtors, they have a lot of information and a lot of viewpoints about what our housing issues are. And so I think some people who are on the true private side really ought to be in that room. And I guess often when I talk to realtors particularly, I find that they don't always understand what some of the limitations are and what's going on in the county. But so I think dialogue with folks like that is very, very useful.
Yeah, Commissioner Webb, I think, I know that the development community was mentioned, but I don't know if realtors were. So I think that's a really good suggestion of someone that should be incorporated into that.
And I think bankers as well. That, you know, they're the folks who lend money to all of these efforts in the private sector. And I think especially we're very fortunate here to have as many local small banks as we do, and some of them have pretty terrific
I agree.
input.
Yeah, good suggestions. Commissioner Toyoka.
Thanks, Commissioner Webb, for helping clarify that. I was going down that road when I was talking about private partners. I really wanted to emphasize, you know, builders, developers. I have had quite a few discussions with some that, you know, they say they would love to do that, but there are so many roadblocks. There are so many, you know, impediments to get there. So, you know, my concern was how can the county facilitate that development? Obviously, you know, they would agree to rules like, you know, it has to be for certain criteria. And in that discussion, I think we have to compartmentalize. Are we talking about transitional housing? Are we talking about low-income housing? Are we talking about workforce housing? Because those are all different area, different standards. So when we have those discussions, especially with our private partners, we need to look at what niche are they gonna fill? How can they, partner in this endeavor to, and what slice of the pie can we help fulfill?
Yeah, thank you, Commissioner Delacote. Commissioner Banks?
And just an add-on of, like, what roadblocks can we remove and what incentives can we provide? I feel like when I talk to builders, there's a lot of roadblocks that, they verbalize to me, and I'm not a builder. And so there's a lot of, when you're talking about curbs, I have no idea why this is a roadblock, but apparently it is for some of them. And so, how can we incentivize, but also how can we remove roadblocks for them? So.
I'll say, Commissioners, as I'm certainly that Commissioner Toyoka and I we will carry the flag as we go to the next meeting and have this conversation with the group, so.
Yeah, and I think that county manager stated towards the end of the meeting that this was an opportunity to kind of develop a coalition, and then we need to go out to our state agencies and get them on board with this, because we're going to need their partnership and cooperation to get anything accomplished here. So that's kind of the next phase after we get our stuff in order and then reach out to them. Any other comments, questions?
With two Marines at the, representing the county at the tip of the spear, I think we can get something accomplished.
Boy, now you're really
I'm
going to
going to defer to you, Commissioner, so.
Okay, we don't have any other items on our work session this evening, so we'll go ahead and take a 23-minute break and reconvene for our regular meeting. Okay, call this meeting to order. All rise for the Pledge of Allegiance. Welcome, everybody. The Board of Commissioners, as the governing body of Clatsop County, all county service districts for which this body so acts, and as the Clatsop County Local Contract Review Board, is now meeting in regular session. Clerk of the board, can we have the roll call?
Chair Quila,
Here.
Vice Chair Thompson,
I'm here.
Commissioner Toyoka,
Here.
Commissioner Webb. Here. Commissioner Banks.
Here.
Thank you, Teresa. We had an opportunity to review the agenda in our work session. Any questions, comments? We have a motion?
Mr. Chair, I move adoption of the agenda as presented.
Second. Moved and seconded to approve the agenda as presented. All those in favor signify with an aye.
Aye.
Aye. All those opposed? Okay, motion carries. Next is business from the public. This is an opportunity for anyone to give a 2-minute presentation about any item on the agenda except for public hearings or any topic of county concern that is not on the agenda. Clerk of the board, are there any members of the public who have registered to speak?
No, there are not.
Anyone here that would like to participate in public comment? Okay, we'll go ahead and move on to the consent calendar. Had an opportunity to review the consent calendar. Any questions, comments?
Mr. Chair, I would reiterate my comment, if I might, that item number 8, Colpack is providing fiscal and administrative services on behalf of the Child Care Advisory Group. I'm vice chair of Colpack. I get no money for that. And I would ask everyone to notice that Colpack is only billing for actual hours spent rather than a flat administrative fee in order to maximize the benefits received to the beneficiaries and to keep costs down. So other than that, if you're ready, I'm happy to move adoption of the consent calendar.
Moved and seconded to move adoption of the consent calendar. All those in favor signify with an aye.
Aye.
Aye. All those opposed? Okay, motion carries. We'll start with Commissioner Liaison reports. Commissioner Thompson.
Thank you, sir. There was a meeting today to celebrate the Arch Cape Forest. I absented myself from an abundance of caution to reduce my exposure to COVID, but my heartiest congratulations to the group that was so instrumental in making that great move forward for the neighborhood and to save the forest and to benefit the environment. Congratulations to my colleagues who saw the wisdom of supporting that with county funds. I would mention that the County Solutions Advisory Committee is meeting Friday. It's a robust group. We're dealing with housing issues. We're dealing with water issues. We're dealing with considerations about a different kind of economic district. So if you're looking for a good time, come on to that meeting. We're also doing more water work next week for the task force on the House Bill 5006 group. So water's a big topic right now. Mr. Chair, I think that's enough for tonight. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Thompson. Commissioner Banks?
My plate is pretty full with Clatsop County Fair coming next week. There's an all-call for volunteers, so if anybody listening is interested in volunteering, the Fairgrounds Expo and 4-H is looking for volunteers. And it's listed on the Facebook page for Clatsop County Fair and Expo on how to fill out their forms and be able to volunteer. But I am just very excited for these kids, and I would just ask that the fairgrounds and their board is doing an amazing job. They are volunteers, other than our county employees. The board is volunteers, and they are working so very hard to make our old-fashioned fair be amazing. And I have just been privy to a lot of the fun games and idea creating and making for these kids to really make our fair an exciting time for the kids of Clatsop County. And so I also invite everyone to the Clatsop County 4-H auction and FFA auction and help support these kids. They've been working hard for the last, I know my kids have been working hard since January, but I know many have been working hard since November with their animals. So please just come out, support them. There's some fundraising barbecues occurring. There's a pig roast, and I think I don't know if it's life-size Pong, but they have these giant barrels that you're going to be able to play Pong in, and stick horse races, so it just looks like a lot of fun. So I just hope to see everybody there. Oh, I can't forget the concert. My goodness, I'm an 80s baby. I should do a shout out for the concert. So if you haven't had a ticket or gotten your ticket yet, I encourage you to do so because it's going to be an amazing show. So, yes.
Thank you, Commissioner Banks. Commissioner Webb?
For the first time in a long time, I have good news from NOHA. The elevator in Owens Adair has been fixed.
Yeah, great.
And if you had any idea what my phone call log looks like, you would be rejoicing with me. I think that NOHA really handled the outage very, very nicely, I think. We asked CCA to come in, which, as in their usual fashion, they were just terrific at knocking on every single door in the building and asking people what they needed. We wound up hiring someone, a young man who everybody loved, to carry things up and down the stairs and to field requests from people, and so it worked out just fine in the end. So that's I can't tell you how. I mean, it was as usual. It was a real community effort, and it was really I think very important that when I called CCA and when I called the local fire marshal and asked for their help, boy, they were there, Johnny on the spot. It just everybody pulled together, and it was really a pretty wonderful escapade. It was only the supply chain that had something to do with the part that was only about that big in the elevator. The best news also is that we have a new director at NOHA, and I will be bringing her name is Alyssa Gertler, and I will be bringing her forward to you all to meet. We have quite an agenda. We have several projects in motion, et cetera, and so we're working really hard, and I'll bring her to you. And I think she's very dynamic. She came to us from Metro in Portland, and she was their housing and planning director for a number of years. So she knows what she's doing, and we're hoping to school her now on all these terrible intricacies of HUD funding rules and regulations and numbers. So as I say, I'll be bringing her forward to meet you all. Otherwise, we're feeling really good about it. We are about also to, we had a meeting this last month for our regional workforce board, And we had it here in Astoria, actually at the community college, and for that we have a new class of representative on the board, Greg Marl, who runs Burgerson Construction. And it was, I have to tell you, it was tough. I had to really, really go after him hard because he's a busy guy. And he likes to do his homework before he accepts responsibility. And so we had to prove that we were a worthy board for him. And it's going to be terrific because he combines both maritime issues and also construction issues. So he's a great asset for the board.
Okay. Yeah. Thank you, Commissioner Webb. Commissioner Toyoka?
Thank you. Good evening, everyone. I just wanted to, I've been absent from Clatsop County for over a week. We had college visits for our sons, so I just wanted to thank my fellow commissioners for covering my assignments in my absence. Appreciate it very much, and it just shows how well we work together as a board, covering each other and taking care of issues. 4-H wise, yes, we are looking forward to that. We've had tons of kids coming into our business with letters and cards and, notifications as what animals they're presenting this year and looking for their help, and it's been wonderful. We are proud sponsors of the fair and the concert. I listen to country. I couldn't even tell you who's there. I wouldn't even recognize it. But we proudly sponsor that because we know it's for the youth of this county, and that is our future. That's the importance of 4-H. We are supporting our future here. In terms of my own reports, I have some other detailed notes, but I wanted to save that for our discussions on some of our hearing items. So I'll refer to them.
Thank you, Commissioner Toyoka. Trace Adkins.
Do you not know who Trace Atkins is?
Not a clue.
You're not a country music fan.
I feel like I need to bring you a CD, but I'm not sure you would know where to put it to play it, so.
Real quickly, and Commissioner Toyoka mentioned, it was my pleasure to cover for the Housing Task Force an introductory meeting along with Gail Henriksen, our Community Development Director, and County Manager Don Boone. Really was an orientation meeting and an opportunity to hear again from Jeff Adams from Cannon Beach, who has a lot of experience and has been analyzing housing trends throughout the nation, really. And an opportunity also to kind of share what's working, what's not working. One thing that everybody agreed was that we need to meet more frequently. We had talked about quarterly meetings, but this is something that's going to require some real effort. So it's going to be a monthly meeting from now on, and we're just going to be plotting next steps. And Commissioner Toyoka, I know you'll be attending the next meeting, but I'm encouraged. There's a lot of momentum from the municipalities that were there, and we know now who else we need to have at the table. So we'll be expanding that group as we move forward. Also, participated in city manager interviews for the city of Warrenton today. There were 2 good candidates, so I know that the commission will be hearing from them tomorrow, and hopefully they'll choose the best one. But I thought both of them acquitted for themselves very well, and they have two good ones there. Lastly, the CREST meeting is tomorrow, so I'll be attending that at 12 o'clock. Just our monthly board meeting or quarterly board meeting is tomorrow, and I'll turn it over to the county manager.
Chair Cuello, members of the board, there was 3 items on the consent agenda that I just wanted to just recognize because they're all ARPA-funded projects and they're all really future-focused. And even though we didn't talk about them, one is the SBDC funding, and Kevin's here, and that's vital for our business community. Then we had the 911 project dollars. The sheriff is also here. That's obviously a very future-focused effort also. And then there was the Colpack administrative and fiscal agreement for the child care advisory group, which Dan Gaffney's here, Eva Manderson, and then Joanna and Chair Cuello, and many others, Commissioner Banks. There's a lot of things that are happening now, and so I think it's important for us every once in a while just to pause and just take note of the progress that we are making. None of these are simple problems to solve, and getting the first initial push is often what it takes. So I just want to thank everybody for their efforts.
Yeah, thank you, County Manager. I appreciate you highlighting those items and appreciate you guys being here this evening. This is a great first step in all of those, and Cedar has done tremendous work. I know Sheriff Phillips is working hard on 911, and then Dan Gaffney will be the project manager moving forward on child care. So thanks again for all your efforts. We'll move on to the first item, which is the public hearing this evening, ordinance declaring a temporary ban on psilocybin businesses. First reading, page 110. I'll turn it over to our county manager, or county council. Are you going to present? County council.
Yes. Thank you, Chair Quayla and commissioners. It is such a pleasure to be able to speak here in person, isn't it? I'm having to retrain my brain though, so forgive me if I make any errors. As you all recall, last week we talked about psilocybin, and the first thing we talked about was how to pronounce it. My brother then corrected me that there are multiple ways to pronounce psilocybin, so forget anything I told you. We'll just try to battle through, but that's what siblings are for, right? The second thing I understand is that I gave you a fact that was actually an error. I had stated that there was only 4 hours of training that was required for service centers. Subsequently, somebody reached out to me and pointed me in the right direction. It's actually 40 hours of training. So I think that does provide some additional assurance that OHA is, in fact, making sure everything is kosher and on the right path. So just to give a little bit of a recap, ballot measure 109 was passed by Oregon voters in November 2020. It authorized psilocybin manufacture and delivery starting in January 2023. The regulations are required by OHA to be promulgated, but they won't actually be promulgated until the full regulations won't be promulgated until the end of December of this year. And then shortly thereafter, on January 2nd, 2023, by law, OHA has to start requiring the acceptance of service center applications and manufacture. There's a lot of uncertainty on how this will actually work. Number one, local governments don't know what those rules will ultimately contain. We don't know how the market will be driven by the psilocybin distribution service centers or the manufacturer. There's a lot of unknowns. As I mentioned last time, Oregon is the first state in the nation to actually go through this process and essentially allow a method of distribution of a controlled a Schedule 1 controlled substance. So the discussion we had at the last work session, and staff was given direction, was to prepare an ordinance for a 2-year moratorium. And this would allow staff to analyze the present conditions, to create appropriate time, place, and manner regulations that would fit the unique circumstances that counties have, and the unique circumstance that we might find ourselves in Clatsop County. In essence, it buys us some time to analyze what we might need to do to adequately provide for public health and safety for our citizens. So in front of you, you have an ordinance, in fact, enacting this temporary ban on the psilocybin businesses. And then we also provided a resolution and an order that would be adopted if your board pass this ordinance for first reading. At the second reading, then you would have the option of then resolving and ordering staff to refer this to the ballot. I think with that, I'm happy to answer any questions.
Thank you for that presentation, staff report, County Council. Any questions? Commissioner Banks?
I guess the biggest thing that jumps out to me is the Oregon Health Authority doesn't even have their rules outlined yet. And then to have them tell us that they're not going to be ready until December of 2022, and then this is going to be enacted January 2nd of 2023. I feel like we need time. And I feel like the moratorium is the best way to get that time, because I know we can pivot really fast, but that just seems like whiplash more than pivoting, and reactive versus proactive. And I would really like our county to be proactive when, I guess, jumping into this very new situation. So I would fully support that moratorium.
Yeah. Thank you, Commissioner Banks. This is the time for actually asking questions of the county council, and we'll have time for discussion from the commission later on. Commissioner Thompson.
Thank you, sir. And my question for county council is, do we have any idea if DHS will actually be able to meet their proposed deadline? And anything about the content of the regulations? Do you have any ideas? Or are we simply waiting to see what happens?
Commissioner Thompson, it's a great question. They are, and I'm not sure if they have released draft rules, but they will not be finally adopted until December, like I mentioned. But those are always subject, even a temporary, release of a rule is always subject to change. So we'll have an idea of what those rules will be.
Okay, thank you, county council. Commissioner Banks?
So do they have any, is this going to be a clinic, or is this going to be kind of like our marijuana stores? I guess, or do they not know that? What is the setup? Is this going to be a doctor prescribed situation? I don't know.
Commissioner Banks, another very good question. This is different than the retail sales of marijuana. Actually, you're required to consume the psilocybin on site and to be monitored by trained folks.
Is there a certification or a doctorate or I don't know, nursing degree that comes with that? I don't know.
I understand there's a certification that's issued by OHA.
Okay. So that's the 40 hours. That's what applies to the 40. Okay.
That's correct.
Thank you, county council. Do we have any other questions?
Commissioner Quayler?
Commissioner Toyota?
County Council, question is, the 109 prohibit service centers within incorporated city limits, so this only pertains to unincorporated areas? Did I read that correctly?
Yes, Commissioner Toyoka, that is an excellent question and clarification. Yes, although this, if your board chooses to move forward with the ordinance, would be a countywide vote, in fact, would only impact the unincorporated areas. So those areas that are outside of city limits.
So they cannot have those centers in any of our cities, just has to be within an unincorporated area?
Each of the different, as a clarification, each of the different cities will deal with their own local jurisdiction differently. We know that, I believe, gosh, it's off the top of my head, but generally, I think it was the city of Seaside, if I recall correctly, that was going to move forward with a similar vote of the people for a 2-year moratorium. And I believe the other cities, such as Warrenton, were considering time, place, and manner restrictions. But I believe the other 3 cities did not have any tasks that they were looking to do.
I thought I read that in the Measure 109 that it was not, the service centers were not even allowed in incorporated city limits. Was that wrong?
Commissioner Toyoka, members of the board, I think that is the point of contention for, you have cities that are moving forward with moratoriums, because I think it's unclear, there's some question. I'm not sure that it would make sense to have these cited just in the rural areas. And so there are questions from LOC and others about whether there is a prohibition in the urban areas, because, I mean, the urban areas are really where these would be cited. And so there'll be some conversation and potential clarification about that, and potentially litigation, so.
And thank you. Commissioner Banks?
Would the moratorium also address growing it within our county limits?
Yes, for distribution. It would address that as well. As far as going into, I would say, the stream of what the psilocybin regulation is for ultimate distribution, yes.
Okay. If we don't have any other questions, we'll go ahead and open the public hearing at this time. Clerk of the board, are there any members of the public who have registered to speak?
No, there are not.
Okay. Thank you, Teresa. Is there anyone else who is here that would like to speak? Anyone else virtually? See, Commissioner Thompson, you have your hand up.
Are you ready?
Just one second. Yeah, I guess we are. Go ahead. Any question, any discussion, Commissioner Thompson?
Well, thank you. When we met last time, Mr. Chair, I mentioned the fact that human beings have felt the need for a long, long time to self-regulate their emotional functioning with a variety of substances: alcohol, caffeine, nicotine, stimulants, suppressants of some kind. So ballot measure 109 addressed psilocybin, and Lizzie Atwood Mills, who used to work for the Association of Oregon Counties, reached out to me. And what I said to her was, I'm in favor of using well-regulated psychotropic substances for treatment purposes. Remember, we could have them for treatment purposes or recreation. I'm in favor of treatment purposes. DHS hasn't provided essential foundational regulation for us to implement ballot measure 109. Until they do, we're unable to regulate time, place, and manner of psilocybin use in Clatsop County. Therefore, I must vote in favor of sending a moratorium to the voters in November. I'm concerned that the considerable and very negative impacts of ballot measure 110 will prejudice local voters against psilocybin. It's essential to have sidebars and consequences for ballot measure 110, and right now, please. So that's what I have to say about ballot measure 109. I think we should send it to the voters and ask, what do they want us to do right now? And because we have no effective regulation from DHS, OHA, and won't have in a timely fashion, I don't see any way for us to go forward. But eventually, well-regulated therapeutic use of psilocybin seems to me to be a reasonable effort to have for the public well-being. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Commissioner Thompson. Any other discussion from the commission? Commissioner Toyoka.
Well, I have issues. One is that, like, for my research, the trials, phase 3 trials for the therapies have not even began. They haven't gone past trials. They don't know about, how the interaction with these psilocybin therapies could be with other medications. Currently, it's a certification, as they list, but there is non-medical requirements, so you can have a non-medical facilitator at these facilities providing these therapies, and they don't know what interaction or what outcome could happen. And you don't know, as written, you don't even have to have a diagnosed illness to receive the therapy. Walk in and say, I want a therapy. So there's a lot of open ends in that, and I think if we look at Measure 110 as a barometer, the intention of Measure 110 was to hopefully get people to treatments and all that. Well, evidently, it's not happening. You look at Washington County as an example. I only spent time looking at one county, Washington, and crime is up, drug-related deaths, overdoses up. So it's kind of an adverse effect from 110. So I think until they get their ducks in line on 109, we're looking at the same situation. It's very incomplete, and I think that as it was written, it's very loosely written, and I think it's very directively written. They're trying to direct you in a certain avenue of that this is a wonderful therapy, but they don't describe how they haven't completed, the bill. They don't have set protocols, and there are no measures or regulatory measures in place. It's very loose at this point, and I would defer to the sheriff and talk about, the effects of 110, and I think that we will look at the same thing with 109. until they get everything, until they get it in order before we would unleash it on our county.
Yeah, thank you, Commissioner Tuioka. Any further comments from the commission? Commissioner Bangs?
I commented a little earlier, but just to kind of follow up, I fully agree with Commissioner Toyoka and Commissioner Thompson in this discussion of commonly in rural communities or rural counties, self-medicating because of, you know, whatever other types of issues that are faced in rural communities, is often, you know, a higher rate of alcoholism, a higher rate of drug use, and we're already dealing with a number of higher rates that make me uncomfortable, including houselessness. And so 40 hours of school in order to give an altering drug to someone does not feel like enough school. When I think about how much schooling I have had just to be able to sit in a classroom with our children, and how much schooling my brother has gone through as a doctor. And so when we think about who are we allowing to prescribe medications, those folks have to go through such a rigorous teaching. And so when we're thinking about doing this, I'm really concerned about self-medication. I'm really concerned about folks, you know, reaching out because they can't find help somewhere else, and trying everything and anything in order to help them feel better. And so, and while we're faced with a mental health crisis in our state. And so a moratorium is prudent, especially since nothing seems to be outlined. You can't get medication from a doctor without going to a doctor. And so this just seems scary to me as a parent. And so I've talked about how, you know, the majority of our voters voted for this 2 years ago, and like my instincts as a parent say, oh heck no, please let's not bring this into our community. But then I have to say that, you know, my vote may or may not be the majority of Clatsop County, and so I feel like we really need to refer to our voters in this before we move forward, and a moratorium is only prudent.
Thank you, Commissioner Banks. Any other comments? Commissioner Webb?
I think that our voters have already spoken, and as always with, I've only been in Oregon close to 35 years, so I guess I can still say that I think that our initiative position is a crazy way to operate a government. But my concerns are that I completely share with my fellow commissioners is that this whole effort is just not ready for prime time in any way. I don't agree with sending it back to the voters because I think at this point we know so little about how this is going to operate. I wouldn't want voters to make a decision being so thoroughly underinformed about what it would look like. And one of the things I would like to encourage, I'm very much in favor of this moratorium. One of the things that I failed to mention, I'm sorry, in my review, and I hope I'm not out of order, is that I would like to see us vote for this moratorium and then communicate with the state and let them know why we're doing this. Because I was particularly proud of the response that we got from OECS, from Andrea Bell, about the letter that we sent about our concerns about housing. And I think we need to get much more aggressive about letting people at the state level know why we do what we do and how we feel about the mandates that they hand down to us. And I think this is a case where we need to talk about this. We need to talk about all the concerns we have here, which I think are very, very legitimate. I certainly agree with the 40-hour issue. Mind-boggling. And so, and there are many other things that I think this confusion about what the urban versus the rural role is, et cetera. So I would love for us to enact this moratorium and then let the state know why we're doing it.
Yeah.
And about all of our concerns.
Commissioner Webb, would you like to make a motion?
I'd love to make a motion.
No.
I move to conduct a first reading of ordinance number 2207, declaring a temporary ban on, nope, I practiced this. Silo side bin.
Got it. Yep.
I'll second that.
Moved and seconded to conduct first reading of ordinance number 22-07, declaring a temporary ban on psilocybin businesses. All those in favor signify with an aye.
Aye.
Aye. All those opposed? Okay, motion carries. And I like the idea of communicating our position to the state as well. Thank you for that. Next item is the Smith conditional use permit.
Chair Quayla, I
Remand.
think we're gonna need to read
Oh, I'm sorry.
by title
My
only.
gosh, I skipped ahead. Sorry, Gail. Council, will you read the ordinance by title only?
Thank you. An ordinance declaring a temporary ban on psilocybin businesses.
Thank you, County Council. Now we'll move on to the Smith conditional use permit, Luba remand on page 119. Before we start,
I'm on the right one.
I'll ask my fellow commissioners, any declarations of bias or ex parte contacts on behalf of the commission? Everybody? Hear me? No? No ex parte contacts, no declarations of bias? Okay. Is any member of the audience who objects to the member hearing this matter? Is there anyone in the audience that objects to a member of the commission hearing this matter? Okay. Go ahead then and go to the staff report and our Community Development Director, Gail Henriksen.
Okay, thank you, Chair and Commissioners. Just before we get started, I found it kind of ironic that I'm following psilocybin because as I put my presentation together all day today, I was thinking about how complex this is, what a rabbit hole it is, and of course that led to Jefferson Starship, which led to Grateful Dead, and here we are. But just a little bit of levity before we do go down that rabbit hole, because it's going to be a long strange trip. So, I am Gail Henriksen. I am the Community Development Director for Clatsop County. My clicker, no matter where I point it, does not move anything, so I'm going to ask Teresa to please advance to the next slide. We are here tonight after a final opinion and decision from LUBA, which is the Land Use Board of Appeals, and they have remanded back to your board a case that has been going on for quite a while, which we will discuss when we get to the next slide. What the request is approval of a conditional use permit. The applicants have applied to construct a road within a platted public right-of-way that has been in existence since 1926. The applicants originally requested a 150-foot road extension extending north from East Shingle Mill Lane, which is down in the Arch Cape area east of Highway 101. And then as part of the review, Public Works also requested a 40-foot extension to accommodate emergency vehicle turnaround. And so the approach road would be 20 feet in width. It would be constructed of gravel. And as part of the project, water, sewer, and electric lines would also be installed in the approach road area.
It should work now.
Oh, okay. Oh, look at that. Okay, thank you. The timeline, which I promised you that we would discuss, begins in January 19 of last year when the applicants submitted their original application. The Community Development Department issued a conditional approval for the request on April 23rd of last year, and then on May 5th, the first appeal was filed by the Oregon Coast Alliance, the Arch Cape Falcon Cove Community Beach Community Club, and by Stuart Sandler. On June 22nd, we conducted a de novo hearing, which means we did that hearing from scratch, and that was held before the Clatsop County Planning Hearings Officer. And then on August 3rd, he issued his decision. And that decision was to deny the appeal and to affirm the conditional use with a slight modification. And then on August 16th, Orca, the community club, and Stuart Sandler appealed that decision to your board, and that came before you on August 25th of last year. Your board denied the appeal and summarily affirmed the hearings officer's decision. And it's important to remember that because we will talk about that later on. On September 21st, Orca, the community club, and Stuart Sandler then filed their appeal to LUBA, the Land Use Board of Appeals. We conducted oral arguments on March 15th. On April 18th of this year, LUBA issued its final opinion and order, which sent the case back to us. And on June 6th, the applicants requested this remand hearing that we're conducting this evening. So I want to talk a little bit about LUBA's final opinion and order and what they are looking for from us this evening. So they remanded the case back, sent it back to us for two reasons. One is to look at wetland impacts, and the other is to look at seasonal flooding. They specifically want us to provide enhanced findings to discuss those two items and the conditions that were included in the staff decision and then adopted by the hearings officer and then your board. And specifically, and this is where we start to go very deep into the code, they are looking only at wetland impacts and seasonal flooding and how it relates to one very specific section of the code, which is section 2.4030, subsection 3, subsection C, subsection 4. And we will talk about that quite a bit this evening. So other than that, everything else that was in the original LUBA filing has been, so if the, other than the wetlands issues and the seasonal flooding, anything else that was either raised before LUBA, raised in a previous hearing, or could have been, is at this point deemed resolved, and it cannot be raised again. And so when we conduct this hearing tonight, it's on the record, which is why your board packet is so big, but that material is located in there. And we will not be accepting new evidence. And you cannot use new evidence to make a decision or to make your decision. And at this point, if Chris Crean is available, Chris Crean is with Barry Elsner. He is the county land use legal counsel. I know that he wanted to provide some additional instruction to your board as well.
Thank you, Gail. As Gail mentioned, for those who don't know me, my name is Chris Crane. I'm with the firm of Barry Elsner and Hammond, and we have been serving as outside counsel to the county for land use matters for, I don't know, maybe 5 or 6 years now. So I apologize if any of you don't know me, but that's who I am. The other thing is I am at the County Councils Association Conference in Redmond, staying at Eagle Crest, and the Wi-Fi here is terrible. So if I cut in and out, I apologize. Please let me know if anything I have to say doesn't come through. Regarding the LUBA decision and the board's decision tonight, you may recall, I mean, it was some number of months ago now, so you may not, but when this originally came up through the county's review and approval process, it went to a hearings officer. The hearings officer adopted findings, approved the application. The board looked at it, and under your code, you're allowed to just summarily adopt the hearings officer's decision based on the record as it existed then, which is what the board did. Adopted the hearings officer's decision and all the findings and approved the permit, and that was appealed to the Land Use Board of Appeals. And LUBA, you know, while it's always fun to poke a stick in LUBA's eye and saying, I don't know what they were thinking, that their only concern when reviewing the decision was looking at the findings for that one criterion that Gail mentioned, 2.4030, paragraph 3C4, regarding site suitability. The findings and one of the conditions of approval were in conflict, according to LUBA. The findings said that the road extension for the hammerhead for the emergency turnaround may affect a wetland, And one of the conditions of approval said the road had to stay out of the wetlands. And LUBA just couldn't figure out a way to reconcile those two statements, which is fair. There were a lot of findings, and LUBA dismissed all of the other arguments and upheld the county's decision with the exception of that one finding, and sent it back for additional analysis and findings on that one criterion. So, I sat down with staff, we sat down and we looked at the record and said, all the information's there. We just need to write better findings on that criterion. So that's what we did. And those supplemental findings are in your packet. They're specific to the issues that were identified by LUBA. As a legal matter, we have decided not to reopen the record because there is sufficient evidence already in the record to make a determination whether that criterion is met or not. And the other thing is there's a legal principle in Oregon that says once issues that either were resolved or could have been raised and resolved in earlier phases of the proceeding can't be then re-raised later on. So anything that could have been argued at LUBA or before the hearings officer, those issues are deemed resolved legally. And the only remaining issue is this one compliance with this one criterion. So that's another reason that we decided not to reopen the record, because when you do, it tends to open the floodgates and we get a lot of evidence on issues that have already been legally resolved. So people are, and I understand there are a lot of people who have signed up to testify. And anybody can testify and make whatever arguments they want based on the evidence that's already in the record, but we're not accepting any new evidence. There was one letter from the Arch Cape Falcon Cove Beach Community Club dated July 25th that tried to put into the record new evidence about Clatsop County significant wetlands. There was a document attached to that was not in the record. So we have specifically rejected that, and it can't be considered by the board tonight as part of the decision because it's not in the record. Otherwise, all of the emails and things that came in, we looked at, decided those are just basically people making argument based on the existing record, and that's fine, that's allowed. Just no new evidence. So that's why that July 25th, 2022 letter and attachments from the Arch Cape Falcon Cove Beach Community Club is not included in the record, is specifically rejected and can't be considered by the board tonight. Other than that, I don't have any procedural guidance or issues that I wanted to point out, and I'm just happy to answer questions, and I will be standing by throughout to answer any questions or respond to any issues that may come up.
Great, thank you, Special County Counsel. Let's go ahead. We can move into the public hearing, and I can open the public hearing at this time. And this is how it's going to go. We're going to go first, give an opportunity for proponents to comment. Second, include the applicant, of course. Then we're going to go to the opponents and neutral parties to comment. And then third, the applicant will be given an opportunity to rebut. So, County Clerk or Clerk of the Board, are there any members of the public who have registered to speak?
Yes.
Okay, and again, we'll have to divide these into folks that are proponents to begin with. So we might have to call through people and determine if you're a proponent. So go ahead, County Clerk or Clerk of the Board.
I have Stuart Sandler.
Stuart Sandler, are you speaking as an opponent?
I am speaking as I don't know. Which is the proponent side and which is the opposition? I'm not sure how that's defined by you. So please tell me.
So if you're a opponent of...
I'm against this road going in. I'm against the road going in. Does that say it?
Yeah, so you'll be speaking as an opponent. So we'll come back to you, Stuart.
Okay.
Next.
That's all I have for public testimony.
Okay. Is there anyone?
Oh, I have the applicant.
The applicant. So can I have the applicant join us?
Adam Smith.
Yes, good evening. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
So my name is Adam Smith. I'm a land use attorney with Schwabe, Williamson and Wyatt. And for the record, my work address is 360 Southwest Bond Street, Suite 500, Bend, Oregon 97702. Our firm represents the applicants in this matter. and I'm covering for my colleague tonight, Garrett Stevenson, who has been shepherding this project through for quite some time. Garrett was unfortunately unable to make it tonight, and so he asked me to cover. I'm going to keep my comments pretty brief at this time, and I'm of course willing to answer any questions. And I may have additional comments to offer in rebuttal, but I think your staff has laid out the situation for the board quite succinctly, and I don't have too much to add. As has been noted, our clients applied for a land use permit to simply build an access road in an existing public right-of-way that's been in existence for decades. No other development is being contemplated at this time. It is just the proposal for that access road. As was noted, county staff reviewed and approved that application. A hearings officer then independently reviewed and approved that application after de novo hearing. And then this board reviewed the hearings officer decision and unanimously adopted the hearings officer's findings and interpretations as its own. As was noted, the Land Use Board of Appeals went through numerous issues and agreed with the applicant on most of those issues, remanding the matter back to the county on, in the grand scheme of things, a pretty narrow issue concerning one provision of your code, 2.4030, subsection 3, subsection C, subsection 4. That code provision requires a determination that the site under consideration, in this case, the site under consideration is the public right-of-way, is suitable for the proposed use, in this case, an access road, considering, and this is a quote from the code, the natural and physical features of the site, such as topography, natural hazards, natural resource values, and other features. This truly is a very narrow issue that's in front of the board this evening. And has already been noted that the record is closed and no new evidence should be presented or needs to be considered by the board. And instead, the only matter before this board is really the interpretation of that provision. And staff has already put forward in your agenda packet a pretty robust interpretation of that provision, as recommended interpretation of that provision, and then recommended some additional findings that are applying that provision to the record that was already developed in this case. The applicant fully supports that interpretations and those findings as proposed by staff. We support that interpretation and those findings primarily because they're consistent with the county's previous decisions. I mean, the interpretation and those findings are consistent with staff, the hearing officers, and this board's previous decision. It's really just a more detailed explanation of the same decision that the county made on this matter in the past. The opponents, and you've received some written comments, and I'm sure you'll hear a little bit more from those opponents tonight. Some of those opponents are trying to change that outcome from the previous decisions by introducing new evidence. As your county counsel already noted, that is inappropriate. The record has not been reopened in this matter. And we agree that no new evidence shouldn't be taken and is really needed to be taken. And then some of those opponents are advocating for a different interpretation from what was issued before. The applicant instead has noted, we support staff's proffered interpretation because it really is just a more detailed explanation of the county's previous decision, county's previous interpretation, and those findings, which is precisely what LUBA was asking for in this case. I'm happy to answer any additional questions that you may have, and I'll certainly reserve time to rebut any additional testimony that may come up. But as I said, I was anticipating keeping my comments pretty brief at this introductory stage.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Smith. Do we have anyone else speaking in favor of the application? Okay, not seeing any, we'll go ahead and move to opponents and neutral. Stuart Sandler, I'll go ahead and if you can state your name and address for the record.
Stuart Sandler, and my Archcape address is 31941 East Shingle Mill Lane.
Thank you.
Shall I go on?
Yeah, go ahead.
Are you ready? Okay. Why are we here today? Because LUBA demands that Clatsop County resolve their inaccuracies about this conditional use road permit they recklessly approved. LUBA warns not so fast, and they said this: we agree with petitioners that more adequate findings are necessary to explain the apparent contradiction between requiring that the road and turnaround stay out of delineated wetlands while acknowledging that at least the turnaround may encroach on delineated wetlands. The possibility of obtaining state wetland permits does nothing to resolve that apparent contradiction. That's what Luba said. But the county has in no way resolved that contradiction. Luba clearly wants them to explain why they said to stay out of the wetlands in the first place, what their reasoning was, and when, how, and why they changed their minds. The county has not even tried to resolve the contradiction. We know nothing more about this obvious contradiction than we did before. The citizens still want to know, and Luba still wants to know. Luba also said neither the hearings officer's decision nor the staff report includes any findings addressing flooding. Condition 7 cannot substitute for findings addressing that issue or findings establishing the suitability of the site if, in fact, seasonal flooding is a problem. Accordingly, we agree with petitioners that remand is necessary for the hearings officer to adopt findings on this issue supported by substantial evidence. Luba is asking for physical evidence of seasonal flooding problems, not more obscure codes. Luba is saying that it is incumbent upon the county to present physical evidence of the working of this wetland to establish suitability. How often does it flood? How deep? How fast is the flow? What do all the available pictures of the flooding signify? All the county says is that it isn't in a floodplain and it isn't in the county inventory. But it is not in the county inventory because the county has abstained from putting it in the inventory next to all the other established county wetlands that are included in the inventory. That is even though their own hired consultant told them it belongs there, it belongs in that inventory. Another contradiction the county has not resolved. Luba wants physical data, evidence. The county has accumulated no data, none. They are willing to risk public safety from flooding to turn this important wetland into a housing project. Shameful.
Thank you, Mr. Sadler. Do we have any others that want to speak in opposition to the application? Any neutral parties that would like to speak? All right, I'll go ahead and let Mr. Smith provide any rebuttal.
Thank you, Chair. I guess just 2 quick points. Mr. Sandler raised inaccuracies that kind of high-centered Luba's consideration of this matter and how those inaccuracies are being resolved. The inaccuracies stem from a permit that was issued by your road department, and that permit notably has since expired. The applicant, our clients, will need to apply for a new permit regardless. That permit was only valid for 6 months. And so I think that's a notable consideration. I mean, by its own terms, that inaccuracy is gone because that permit has expired. That permit noted required as a condition of approval that the road stay out of any wetlands. There was no code that we're aware of that supported that condition. However, it was handwritten onto that permit. More importantly, and probably the most salient consideration, is really just a timing issue. That permit issued by your Public Works Department was issued a few months prior to DSL's wetland delineation report coming out, confirming that there were wetlands on the property. And so after that wetland delineation came out, your planning staff appropriately addressed the wetland delineation in their staff report and recommendations, which the hearing officer then adopted and which the board in turn adopted. So really the inaccuracies just come from the timing of when all of these documents came together. And I think they've been resolved by their own accord because that county road department permit has since expired. In terms of the idea that Luba is demanding new evidence in this matter, I think that's blatantly not correct. Luba's decision instead is clearly asking for not additional evidence. They're asking for an interpretation of the code provision and for additional explanatory findings. In fact, it would be inappropriate in this case to add any additional evidence to the record on that matter. Again, I'm happy to answer any additional questions as they may come up, but unless there are any questions, I don't have anything more to add.
Thank you, Mr. Smith. We don't have any other questions. I'll go ahead and close the public hearing at this time, and I'll allow our staff to provide any responses. Gail Henriksen, our Community Development Director, or Chris Crean, our Special County Counsel. Do you have anything you'd like to add?
I do not have anything to add. Thank you.
Chris?
Thank you. Just to reiterate that last point about the scope of LUBA's decision, the decision was not based on a lack of substantial evidence to support the decision. So LUBA, when Mr. Sandler says LUBA wants more data, that wasn't the basis of LUBA's decision. Again, it was not remanded for failure to comply with the substantial evidence standard. It was specifically remanded because LUBA, quote, wanted more adequate findings, end quote, and that's what you have before you. With that, that's all I wanted to add.
Thank you, Special County Counsel. We'll go ahead and ask the commission, do you have any items that you want to discuss on this? Discussion from the commission? Are we ready for a motion? Oh, Commissioner Webb.
I found this a very, very laborious exercise. And I understand some of the concerns of those who are opposed to this finding. I support our staff finding in this and will vote that way. However, I do think that it illustrates for us how much more information we need in Clatsop County about our geography and about conditions on the ground which will impact future development. I think we have some wonderful information on tsunamis and fairly good information on floodplains. But especially on the wetlands issue, we really lack a lot of good information. As Chair Quayla and I have experienced in this county with our monster wetlands, we don't always have substantial information of what the impacts of mitigation for wetlands are. It's really, the science in this is really very, very complicated, but it's also the fact that we don't have it. We don't have a lot of those scientific conclusions. I really hope we can put this high on our strategic planning process, that we get a better understanding of what our geological issues are in our county. And it impacts so many other things. It impacts development. It impacts our water supply. It impacts our forestry issues. It's just we run up against it all the time. And so I hope that this agony of having gone through, I think that in my 4 years on the commission, this is the longest single item paper-wise that I have ever been presented with. And it ruined my weekend. But I think it's a very good illustration of the fact that we just don't have enough information geologically about our resource spaces in this county. And I'd like to thank the staff for the work that they have put into this. I think it was extraordinary, and it was very, very good. And I think that any time, I just learned that this was our planning director's first journey to LUBA, and I know how fearsome that experience is, and I would like to honor our staff with how well they handled this. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Webb, for your comments. I too agree, and I support the staff findings. Any other discussion? If not, do we have a motion?
I move that the board adopt supplemental findings dated July 13th, 2022, attached as Exhibit A, and approve conditional use permit 21-00005 as modified by Clatsop County Hearings Officer on August 3rd, 2021. As correct.
We have a second?
Second.
Moved and seconded that the board adopt supplemental findings dated July 13th, 2022, attached as Exhibit A, and approve conditional use permit 21-000005 as modified by the Clatsop County Hearings Officer on August 3rd, 2021. All those in favor signify with an aye.
Aye.
Aye. All those opposed? Okay, motion carries. Thank you. Thank you, Gail. Thank you, Chris. We'll move on to the business agenda this evening. 1013, Behavioral Health Resource Network Grant. That's on page 338 of the agenda. Can I find it?
I'm not in order anymore.
I'll go ahead and introduce Jill Quackenbush, who will be presenting on this as I try to find our agenda. 338, now, there you go.
Thank you, Chair and Commissioners. This is great to be here in person. I agree with County Council. I haven't been here in person. I was trying to figure out if I have been here in person in my role even since I moved to public health, or if the last time I was here, I was still at the juvenile department. But a lot's changed since then, so I'm happy to be here. I'm here tonight to request your approval for Clatsop County to enter into a memorandum of understanding between Clatsop County, Clatsop Behavioral Health Care, Clatsop Community Action, Helping Hands Reentry and Outreach, Providence Seaside Foundation, Iron Tribe Network, and Morrison Child and Family Services to establish the Clatsop Behavioral Health Resource Network, or BERN. On November 2020, Oregon voters passed by referendum Measure 110, known as the Drug Addiction Treatment and Recovery Act. The purpose of Measure 110 is to make screening, assessment, treatment, and recovery services for drug addiction available to all those who need and want access to those services, and to adopt a health approach to drug addiction. I appreciate your earlier comments about Measure 110, and I hope that you guys will find that this is putting Measure 110 into order. This is the piece that we've all been waiting for. Together with community partners, Clatsop County Public Health has been awarded a grant of over $6 million by the Oregon Health Authorities Oversight and Accountability Council. Monica Steele, who isn't here tonight, but she's been really active working with our community partners on this grant. And the role of public health in this MOU is to provide harm reduction services, which is one of the required components of the BERN. This includes the ongoing work of the syringe service program, naloxone training and distribution, and other overdose prevention and outreach. Also, as our past interim director, Margot Lelich, has reported to you in our budgeting sessions, that public health, we're currently undergoing an audit of our harm reduction programs, and some of the funding from this grant would allow us to contract with a data analyst to help us with that process. In addition to the services provided by public health, this grant will provide a portion of funding to the Sheriff's Office to purchase an automated medication dispensing system, which would enable safe and efficient medicated assistant treatment, or MAT, for jail inmates with opioid use disorder. MAT is shown to reduce jail recidivism and assist with treatment efficacy. So approval of the MOU will allow the county to enter into contract negotiations with OHA. Today there was a presentation to the Accountability and Oversight Council on the Clatsop BERN, so we're ready to go, and once we have the MOU in place, we'll be able to move forward with those negotiations.
Yeah, thank you very much. I apologize for not giving the proper introduction. Deputy Public Health Director, Jill Quackenbush. So, do you have any questions from the commission? Okay, Commissioner Bangs and then Commissioner Webb.
Oh, okay. I just am curious. I see a wonderful group effort here. I see something that maybe I feel is missing, or it's just not listed here. A relationship with our local law enforcement community, Clatsop Sheriff Department, but also our municipalities, because they're front-facing with the community. Are they going to have a part in this partnership, I guess, other than you listed which I think is wonderful. My recent jail visit was very eye-opening. But that partnership, will it also include our law enforcement entities?
So the best that I can answer that is that the components of the burn grants as created by OHA do not have a law enforcement piece in it. It's very specific to the 7 components of those. However, I can assure you that the partners and our community stakeholders that are a part of this, that we work with our law enforcement, and we can't do this work without that partnership.
I really appreciate that, just because I fully own that Clatsop County can be different, and I like us being different, and involving all of our partners is amazing, so I appreciate that. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Bangs. Commissioner Webb?
Yeah, that was going to be my first question as well. Is it appropriate to ask the mayor, the sheriff? Or?
Sheriff, would you like to address this? Coming up to the table.
On the spot.
Thank you, Chair Corella.
All right, what's the question? Is it about the relationship of working with Jill?
No, because we all know how good that probably is.
No, I know. There's no worries there. I do think you're right, though, that the specific intent of this grant is to provide addiction services and harm reduction, and I think that as these programs develop, that will be additional resources for law enforcement to refer people to.
Oh.
So I think that will be a good thing.
Follow-up question.
Commissioner Toyoka.
So follow-up question, because right now, I know the intent, was to, increase access to treatment. Intent. Right now, there's like a token fine, right? And there's a token fine.
Yes.
For those who have that, since we decriminalized, and no incentive to seek treatment. We open up these centers, have all these, treatments available, still no incentive to go seek that treatment, correct?
Yeah, I think that the idea behind this grant and the program is actually less directly tied to law enforcement interactions with individuals and just making treatment more available to anyone, again, regardless if they've had contact with law enforcement. You're right, 75% of cases where law enforcement do cite someone, they're found guilty, with the vast majority of those failing to appear in court. There is no penalty for not showing up in court or not paying your $100 fine. I think that as of maybe May, I think maybe only 200 people had called Lines for Life out of 2,500 citations issued. So it's a very, very low number of people that are engaging through the citation process. So there's a challenge there. And I think that most law enforcement officers are actually reluctant to issue those citations because they don't see a direct path between, I think, what was promised as treatment as an alternative to punishment. But again, I think the issue is much deeper. I think that Oregon for a long time has had very permissive attitudes towards substance abuse. If you look at the National Survey on Drug Use and Health, Oregon is basically in last place nationwide in terms of the percentage of population that has substance abuse problems. In Oregon, for people 12 and older, nearly 10% reported in 2020 having a substance use disorder. We're number one in the nation for opiate use. And if you look back, because I took a minute today to look at it, in 2010, the NISTA, that survey I was talking about, we were in last place again. And so with respect to Measure 110, I don't think this is any new experiment. It's just a reflection of what Oregon's attitudes have been towards substance use and abuse. policy is following what the sentiment has been for a long time. And what it speaks to is a disorganized society, where we probably see that there's problems, but we cannot come to terms with how to address them. And until we do that, we're going to continue to struggle.
I'm
Go
sorry,
ahead,
can I ask
Commissioner
a
Webb.
question? I thought that the whole point of this was that when these very low citations were entered, that there were referrals made. There's no mandatory.
The way the law is written is that we provide a card to the person at the time of the citation with the phone number to call. If they call that number for a health assessment, so it's a short phone interview, that their court appearance and fine would be waived.
Just by doing that,
Just by making the phone
but
call.
not going into treatment.
Yeah, no, there's no requirement to get any kind of treatment. It's just a health survey.
Is there any way that we could, for instance, as a part of this burn program, is there any way that we could mandate that there be a referral that would be meaningful and perhaps responded to, or legally we couldn't do that?
I don't think so.
I think too, if I could take a stab at that, is that part of these partnerships is that this network is going to be working on just that type of thing. How do we work around, how do we provide wraparound services? So we have peer support services, we have housing that's going to be created through this grant, working closely with Classic Community Action on wraparound services, so that it's not just a, cross your fingers and hope, but we are really trying to reduce the stigma. We're trying to provide the supports, because sometimes it takes many times for somebody to enter into treatment, and then even harder to be successful in treatment, to provide those supports, to keep people engaged, and to provide as much wraparound services as we can to keep people in treatment.
I think that given our concerns, it would be really wonderful if we could figure out a way throughout this process to track some of the services that are just to do some good tracking of data about very similar to what CBH presents to us periodically. I think it would be very, very helpful, especially if it had a component of reporting about Measure 110 offenses. Otherwise, we're not going to know that we're having any impact unless we can take a look at that data.
And I can assure you that as a burn, we have already been oriented on the data collection, that there will be data collection provided. Classic Behavioral Healthcare is actually taking the lead on this grant.
Good.
So we will,
Good.
all the different entities will be providing all of our data that's required of us to them, and they'll be collecting it
Good, because I'm
to
working
report.
with them on performance measurements. So that's the other issue is that I enjoyed seeing the Clatsop County budget component, but I'd like to see all of the participants' budgets. I think if this really is a collaborative, then I'd like to see who's bearing, different levels of responsibility and what it's doing. So because we really are getting a pretty small component of this grant. And I think it was useful. I liked the way, incidentally, that the budget was broken down. I don't know whether that was an OHA matrix or not that you gave us, but I liked that. I liked the issue of capital improvements and staff, et cetera. But I'd love to see that for the rest of the participants.
Yeah, we can definitely provide that. They are just wrapping up those negotiations as far as the budget right now. Interesting enough, our county's proposal, our burn proposal, it was under the allotment to Clatsop County, so OHA has come back and worked with the entities. Housing was a big piece that the Accountability Council wanted to see, so a lot of the extra funding went towards the housing piece.
In what way? Who did that go to? To CCA?
It went to CCA, Helping Hands, CBH are all a part of that. Yeah. I wasn't as intimately involved in that piece of it, but, so I definitely think, because we'll have to come back to you once the MOU has gone forward and the budget negotiations have gone through, we'll have to come back to you for a budget adjustment for the grant. And at that time, we can provide you more details of what agencies were funded and where the funding's going.
Good, thank you.
Sheriff?
I'd add one thing that I would hope for future funding, especially as there was $300 million to be spent on these burn grants this biennium, and they've released 31 million, so barely over 10%. The piece that's really missing in my mind is prevention. I mean, we're talking a lot about treatment. I know that we have a whole cohort of people that need it. But we seem to be repeating this problem over and over and over, generation after generation, and we need to do something meaningful to prevent it. So far, the informal social controls of families and stuff have not been effective in preventing Oregon from having the worst substance abuse rates in the nation. And we've now removed the formal social controls of laws. So we're going to have to go back to the drawing board and find something.
This is why I like to work with him.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Great statements. Thank you very much. Any other questions for our Sheriff or Deputy Public Health Director? Commissioner Banks?
Well, so I can recognize the intent when Measure 110 passed, and I can recognize that this was an effort, kind of throwing darts at a wall, I guess. I can appreciate that you guys are working so hard to circumvent the unintended consequences that our community is suffering from Measure 110. And so I circle back to something that Commissioner Webb stated on, I feel like we need to be more transparent with our state in regards to the impacts and unintended consequences that our rural communities and counties suffer when we are not built like a large Multnomah County, to just name one. And so I appreciate all of the work that you guys are doing, and I agree with the Sheriff on so many levels that I feel like prevention is something that has been missing since probably the early 90s. I remember a lot in my childhood for prevention, a lot of visits into my schools, and a TV commercial with eggs comes to mind, and that was effective for me. I just feel like we are dropping the ball for our current generation that we're raising right now. But I appreciate you guys so much, and yeah, this world is it's disconcerting.
Yeah, thank you, Commissioner Bangs. Any other comments, questions? Commissioner Toyoka?
Just one other, I guess, comment and question. I actually hope he doesn't punch me after our meeting. But, I did a lot of research on this because it is a sensitive issue, and I don't look at my generation. I look at our future, our youth, and that's the real impact, and that's what all of us really looked for is, I'm done, but I really want this place to be good for the youth, the next generation. The district attorney, even at Washington County, said, I'm hopeful with the new effort, this will be successful to address addiction, but I think everyone can agree it's an experiment. So, to me, without any magnitude of consequence, how do we get people to these programs? We have all this money that's only 10% has been allocated. Now here's more. Create new centers, have all these services available. But do we still have empty rooms because no one's there? Because there's no consequence. There's no reason for them to show up. Sheriff's right. We have to address a different issue. And how do we A, get education to prevent this situation, but B, we need our law enforcement to have teeth to actually get people into these programs. Or wait a mechanism. It can't be just like, hey, it'd be nice if you went there, but if you don't, we're not going to find you anyway. we address that? I mean, how, I know this is above our county level and, it's at a different level, but, it does affect us here locally. And, how could we affect change for that next generation? We need to help that generation.
Want me to take a run at that, or? Go ahead, you go first and I'll.
You can definitely.
I have a lot of thoughts on that. Is it an experiment? Maybe. With respect to, if you remove a safety net, and people fall, they will fall to the ground and it won't be a good outcome, right? And so I think that for a lot of issues, law enforcement has been a societal safety net, right? And with Measure 110, we said, we don't want law enforcement to be a safety net anymore. We want it to be a public health issue. And so they removed the safety net with nothing in place, and that's why we've seen our overdose deaths up 41%. Now, yes, they're up nationwide 16%, but Oregon's outpacing the rest of the country. Again, we're number one for being bad. A lot of the data that's coming out on arrest rates are going to be difficult to interpret with respect to the effects of Measure 110 because we have more variables than just implementation of Measure 110. We've had COVID, and so that shut down some of the way that the jails operate. So there was no kind of upfront punishment or deterrent effect of the threat of having to go to jail. Deterrence is what our system of justice is based on. The courts slowed down to a crawl. And so the cases weren't getting resolved, and I think that feels unfair for people. And that was the celerity, right? The certainty, severity of punishment, and how fast, the cases gets resolved and you're caught, right? And of course we've seen, sentences go down. And so there's been a lot of other changes that have affected, crime rates and things like that, and what's reported even to law enforcement went down during COVID. So it's tough to say right now. I think it's early, but certainly the overdose deaths. The other big thing, when marijuana was legalized for recreation, marijuana DUIs went up 163% in the first 6 months. We're seeing counties with 600 to 700% increases in polydrug DUI fatality crashes and serious injury crashes. So that's the vast majority of cases where there's a fatality or serious injury was alcohol only. We've seen a huge spike where it's 3 or more drugs on board at the time of the crash. So, and actually Clatsop County, I just saw the data on that, we're first in the state for several of those categories as well. So we got some work to do.
And if I can offer a little bit of hope, that the Burn Grant, when you look at the continuum of care, the Burn Grant definitely is on the far end of the continuum. But having folks talk about the importance of prevention, it's starting to get heard again. There is a little bit of funding that's starting to get reallocated towards prevention. And so you'll be seeing some of that coming up with some budget adjustments soon. It's not sustained funding, but we're getting somewhere. So I just wanted to offer that as the other piece to the continuum.
Thank you, Commissioner Banks.
I feel like we can sit here and talk all night about this, and I really appreciate this conversation that we're having. And I'm hopeful with getting a group of effective people in the same room like this grant will provide, that we can also start talking about being proactive and not reactive to our problem here in Clatsop County. But with that, can we have a motion?
Please.
I move to approve the MOU between Clatsop County, Clatsop Behavioral Health Care, Clatsop Community Action, Helping Hands Reentry and Outreach, Providence Seaside Foundation, Iron Tribe Network, and Morrison Child and Family Services to establish the Clatsop Behavioral Health Resources Network, otherwise known as the BURN, and authorize the county manager to sign along with any amendments.
Second?
Moved and seconded. All those in favor signify with an aye.
Aye.
All those opposed? Okay, motion carries. Thank you very much, Sheriff. Thank you, Deputy Director Quackenbush. I know we'll be seeing more of you soon. This isn't the end of the discussion. And we don't have any other items on our agenda this evening. Do we have anything for the good of the order?
I do, for the good of the order.
Commissioner Banks.
I just want to say, tonight, with all of the ARPA fund information on our docket upcoming, and I feel like in regards to COVID, those ARPA funds is something that I can really shout to the rooftops that we are going to be able to do a lot in our community that we probably wouldn't have been able to do without a pandemic. And it's a weird mind space to be in, to be appreciative of what is to come, but I'm looking at this glass half full. So hopefully we can do some good things here real fast.
I agree. I'm glad that you highlighted those, and again, that was a big step for a lot of our efforts with childcare and with working with our business community as well, and with the sheriff and our other jurisdictions on 911. Any other comments for the good of the order? If not, we'll go ahead and adjourn. Thank you very much, everyone. Have a great rest of your evening.